Today on the Sci-Fi Academia YouTube channel, we take a look at the Season 2 Voyager episode, Initiations. My name is Cademan David, and in this video, I'm gonna run down the main plot of the episode while just giving my basic thoughts, as well as discussing why or why not I don't like elements of it, such as the Kazon, the character of Chakotay, and the story arc of him and the Kazon child. But also, if you stay tuned to the very end of the episode, we'll pull out a moral of this story that we can apply to our everyday life. So grab a pizza and a Mountain Dew and enjoy the video. So this episode starts with Chakotay, and he seems to be doing some sort of ceremony in honor of his father's death. He's kind of praying to hear from his dead father, Mufasa style.
Father?
He starts his prayer with Akuchi Moya.
Akuchi Moya.
And I heard that and thought, I wonder what that means. So I looked it up and I found some very interesting information. It looks like Akuchi Moya actually means nothing because it turns out the native informant for Star Trek Voyager ended up being not Native American at all and just making stuff up. So that's a kind of fun tidbit. Now the Kazon find Chakotay's shuttle pod and they're not happy about it. Now if you forgot who the Kazon are in between seasons, I don't blame you. These guys aren't the most interesting Star Trek aliens. They're kind of just less cool, less interesting Klingons. So I don't really find them to be very interesting. I don't really care for their designs at all. Now Chakotay's shuttle ends up being shot at by a small Kazon ship, which appears to be piloted by Nog from Deep Space Nine.
Why have you fired on me?
You're on Kazon Ogla Space Federation.
Okay, that was a joke. It's not Nog, but he is played by the same actor who plays Nog in Deep Space Nine. Interestingly, this actor is not a child. However, he did have a condition that made him never grow taller than 5 feet tall, which I'm sure was helpful for the studio because then they could hire him to play children and they could sort of get around child labor laws and sort of the limitations for how long you're allowed to have a child working for, as their actor was an adult. In reality, this actor was 26 at the time of filming this episode. And I must say, he was a good actor, as if I didn't look it up, I would have had no idea that this actor wasn't a child. The actor's name is Aaron Eisenberg, and unfortunately is no longer with us. With that being said, let's get back to the story. So Chakotay is kind of forced to fire back at the Kazon child that's attacking him, and when the Kazon ship is about to explode, Chakotay decides to beam over the child. We then see Janeway discussing something with Neelix. Apparently, he feels like he's not contributing enough to the crew. And I will say, my first time watching through Voyager, I did not like Neelix. Though, now going through it for a second time, Neelix does have some pretty funny moments. He's just very hit or miss for me. Probably about half of his jokes make me like him, and half of his jokes make me want to not like him. Anyway, Voyager is ready to depart this area of space, but Chakotay hasn't reported back yet, so now they have to go and find him. Now when Kazon Nog wakes up in Chakotay's shuttle, he tells Chakotay he should have let him die.
You should have let me die.
But I guess Chakotay is no Anakin Skywalker because he says this.
I'm not in the habit of killing children.
Now Chakotay tries to communicate to the bigger Kazon ship that he has one of their children as the Kazon are pulling in his shuttle via tractor beam. Kazon Nog asks Chakotay to kill him, proclaiming that there is some things worse than being killed by your enemy. And I think the implication here is him either being killed by his own people or else being permanently shunned by his own people. And I kind of like that story beat. I mentioned before I'm not a big fan of the Kazon just generally speaking. However, I feel like this is the one episode where we get cultural elements of said Kazon that I actually like and think are really interesting. You see, it's sort of initiation for the Kazon children to go out and kill an enemy, and that's how they get the second part of their name. And I think that's really interesting. And by the appearance that we see in this episode, if they're unable to kill that enemy, they're shunned forever. And that, I think that's just very cool. I've always had a sort of fascination with sort of Spartic cultures. Now, I will say, I feel like this episode really suffers having the focus on Chakotay. It's almost like the episode forgets that a few minutes ago, let's say a year ago, assuming that the years line up with seasons, which probably they do, but a year ago, Chakotay was part of the Maquis. He was a terrorist, and now he's just a little bit too idealistic for me to believe that not that long ago he was part of the Maquis.
So they brought you here to see your first human. Take a good look. You won't see any hate in my eyes. I'm a gentle man from a gentle people who wish you no harm.
That's enough!
It's not too long before Chakotay and Kazon Nog escape the other Kazon, and they end up on a nearby moon, which apparently the Kazon use for sort of training activities. And Chakotay does a good job of finding some common ground with Kazon Nog. He says how just like the Kazon have to earn their name, Chakotay had to earn his uniform he's wearing. Now, this story beat is a little bit awkward, again, coming from someone who had left Starfleet to become part of the Maquis. He basically gave up that uniform that now he appears to wear so proudly to join, a terrorist organization. So these lines, again, they just feel really awkward coming from the character of Chakotay if you remember his backstory. Yes, he did technically earn the uniform, but he earned the uniform, then gave up the uniform, and then got to wear the uniform again just because he happened to be sucked through a wormhole with Voyager. So what he says here just doesn't quite work for me, even though I like the finding common ground and I like the sort of message of it. It really just doesn't work with the continuity of this character. Chakotay makes a claim in this episode that land isn't something that someone can own, right? He says that's what his tribe teaches, after the Kazon says that the reason he attacked Chakotay is because he was in Kazon territory. Now, I was curious about this, so with not doing a whole lot of research, but just doing a quick Goog, I did find that this is a belief that many Native American tribes do hold, is that you can't own land because they think that land is actually alive? I don't know. Again, it was just a quick Google search. So if anyone has any more information on that, I would love to hear about it down there in the comment section. Kazon Nog threatens to kill Chakotay several times throughout the episode, even pointing a gun at him when he appears to be asleep, but ultimately decides not to pull that trigger. Now later on we learn that Chakotay actually was not asleep and just knew that Kazon Nog would not pull the trigger. And I love this line from Tom Paris.
We'll leave as soon as we've retrieved our crewmen. All of them, including Chakotay, if he's alive. And if one of your people is with him, he'll be returned to you.
Because we know that if they do bring back Child Nog, he is gonna end up dead. So it sort of does a good job of adding a little bit of suspense for that character. You know, what are they gonna do? Is he gonna end up on Voyager, or is he gonna be dead by the end of the episode? So I think putting this line in there was a neat detail for the script. Now, although I'm not a big fan of Chakotay's character, I do like this scene where he tells Kazon Nog that he's not a coward for not killing him.
Why didn't you go through with it?
I am a coward.
I don't believe that. I don't believe you do either.
But I'll explain a little bit more of my issues with Chakotay more towards the end of the video. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of this episode. I think it's pretty mid, as the thumbnail suggests. But I do like everything that happens in the cave between Kazon Nog and Chakotay. It feels like the entire episode was building up to that point. However, the rest of the episode just doesn't really keep my interest that much. And that brings us to a really good scene where Chakotay tells Kazon Nog that he has to kill him. Chakotay knows that the only way Kazon Nog will be accepted by the other Kazons is by... And Chakotay plans to have Voyager's technology bring him back after the Kazons see that he definitely is brain dead. So then eventually Janeway and a small away team, as well as a couple of the Kazons, find Chakotay, who he claims is being held captive by Kazon Nog. And basically Kazon Nog seems like he's gonna go for Chakotay's idea. He's gonna shoot Chakotay. And then in a great moment, maybe the best moment of this episode, Kazon Nog turns around and shoots his basically superior Kazon officer, proclaiming that Chakotay is not his enemy. And apparently by doing this, this is good enough for the other Kazons to let Kazon Nog back into their tribe, or whatever they call it. However, Kazon Nog still seems to want to go with the Kazon way, as he tells Chakotay if he ever comes back into the Kazon territory, Kazon Nog will kill Chakotay. And the episode ends with we see Chakotay praying to the ghost of his father once again, but now, instead of praying for himself, he's also praying for Kazon Nog, saying that he has a difficult path ahead of him.
Father, if you can hear me among these unnamed stars, I ask you to continue to watch over me as you've always done. I ask you also to watch over a boy called Cardane, who has a difficult path to travel.
And I like that. I love that moment. It feels very human. And as you may know, I'm a Christian, and I've found myself praying similar prayers for people I encounter that I just know are going to have a lot of struggle in their life or already do. So, what did I think of this episode? I know you're wondering, and I know that you saw the thumbnail. You heard me say it earlier. Yeah, this isn't one of the greatest episodes of Star Trek. Mostly I find it pretty mid. However, I do enjoy the last moments of it. I just wish they would have put something a little more interesting within the rest of the runtime. Or maybe we could have gotten more focus on how Chakotay connects and ends up almost becoming a friend with Kazon Nog. I don't know, but at the end of the day, I walked away from the episode feeling like there was some great ideas at the end of it, but the majority of the episode is just kind of one of those that it's hard to stay awake during. But with that being said, before we move in to the moral I want to take away from this episode, I would love to hear, whether you like it or not. I think it would be interesting to hear why and have a conversation down there in the comment section. Now, for the moral of this episode, I would like to pull up a quote that is often contributed to Abraham Lincoln. Not sure if he actually said it, don't really care. Anyway, Abraham Lincoln is who I heard said this. The quote goes something like, "Do I not defeat my enemies by making them my friends?" It's really easy when you come across a sort of adversary in life to just label them as your enemy and always fight them. But the problem with, going to war and fighting people is a lot of times people end up getting hurt. So a lot of times better than when you run into someone who's just overly competitive or in some way just against you, instead of trying to double down and punch them back, to do as Chakotay does in this episode and find the common ground with Kazon Nog and turn him into a friend, bringing us all the way to the very last moments of the episode where Kazon Nog proclaims, "You are not my enemy."
But you are not my enemy. He is.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to hear any feedback you might have, good or bad, and that's all I have to say. But if you have anything to say on this episode, or just about my video in general, I would love to have a conversation about it in the comments section. But until next time, live long and prosper, my friend. I'll see you in the next video. Bye now! Oh, I forgot to mention, watch the rest of my Star Trek Voyager reviews right there. Or, if you like Star Wars, I'll also link that. Thank you. Now it's goodbye time. Live long and prosper, still.